Shri Chaitanya Caritamrita ki Jai Gaura Premanande. Shri Caitanya ki. First of all, we'll read from Srila Prabhupada, Caitanya, Uniting Two Worlds, Volume 6, Chant Hare Krishna and Fight. Another of Srila Prabhupada's GBC men, Sat Swarup Das Goswami, had recently replaced Rameshwar Swami as Prabhupada's secretary for the month. Srila Prabhupada Sat Swarup asked one evening while sitting with Prabhupada in his quarters, "When I first came here, Rameshwar Maharaj said that you had been speaking of how Krishna consciousness would rise to power in the United States, and I find it hard to have that vision since now it is just the opposite." "It is true," said Srila Prabhupada, "but now it has only taken its roots. You have to water and protect it, then you will get fruit. You have to give it protection. People must hear about us by our books, and we have to talk about the books." Interesting how Prabhupada didn't say my books. He's given the devotees credit for his books as well. "So it is not that it will happen overnight." "No," said Srila Prabhupada, "gradually it will grow. The seed is there, now protected by introducing more and more books in every home." Again, Prabhupada referred to the upcoming New York court case. "At least tell them to read our books," he said. "This is our statement. Our defense is that you first of all read these books and then give your statement. Finish this and then give your judgment. Give them all these 84 books. Srila Prabhupada became excited by the thought of the judges and lawyers reading all his books. He was completely serious and he insisted the devotees get the authorities read the books as legal evidences. Srila Prabhupada continued, "Krishna says, Sarvadharman Parityaja, surrender to me and give up all other religions. Now the question may arise, why we shall surrender? Then you can argue and go on for 3 years. The whole thing will come out. What is God? What is creation? What is your position? Why you should surrender? And so on and so on and so on. What do you think?" "Yes, we should introduce the books as much as possible," said Sat Swarup. "I'll write a letter to New York and tell them to emphasize this. Bring all these books in the court," Prabhupada said. "One time in Calcutta there was a big lawyer named Mr. Ghosh. So in one case he brought so many books for argument. The judges were friends, so they very mildly criticised him. 'Oh, Mr. Ghosh, you have brought the whole library.' 'Yes, my lord,' said Mr. Ghosh, 'just to teach you law.' Srila Prabhupada laughed and repeated, 'Yes, my lord, just to teach you law.' Prabhupada wanted his disciples to apply the same logic in the New York case. If the judge objected and said, 'Why have you brought so many books to bother me?' the devotees should reply, 'You have to hear. It may take 12 years to hear, but you have to hear. That is the law.' But the devotees knew they would have to try. This was Srila Prabhupada's specific instruction for handling the case. "We have to say," said Prabhupada, "we never tried to brainwash. We have done exactly according to Shastra. Authority hears the evidence. We have not manufactured anything, so they must read all the books. I think you should take defence in that way." "Our defence statement is already written in your books," said Harishori. "Certain sections," asked Sat Swarup. "Or should we say that they have to read all the books?" Prabhupada shouted. "All, line to line. Our defence is 84 volumes. "But they'll say," said Guru Kripa Swami, "if we read all these books, we'll become brainwashed too." "That is my duty," said Prabhupada. "You're trying to brainwash me, and I'm trying to brainwash you. This is going on. This is the tussle. It is wrestling. You're trying your strength, I'm trying my strength. Otherwise, where is their fight? You have got the right to not agree with me, I've got the right to not agree with you. Now let us settle." Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Prabhupada's name is Abhay Charanarvindam, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. He was fearless. He wasn't intimidated by anybody, no matter how big they appeared to be. Because when you've got Krishna on your side, Krishna's unconquerable, you have nothing to fear. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Read from Sri Caitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 17, entitled The Lord Travels to Vrindavan, text 185. Dharma, Stapana, Hetu, Sadhura, Vyavahara. Dharma Stapana Hetu Sadhura Vyavahara. Puri Gosanira Ye Acharana Se Dharma Sara. Puri Gosanira Ye Acharana Se Dharma Sara. Dharma Stapana Hetu Sadhura Vyavahara. Puri Gosanira Puri Gosanira Ye Acharana Se Dharma Sara. Dharma Stapana Hetu Sadhura Vyavahara. Puri Gosanira Ye Acharana Se Dharma Sara. Chant. Ladies. Dharmastapana Hetu, to establish the principles of religion. Sadhura Vivahara, behavior of a devotee. Puri Gosanira, of Madhavendra Puri. Ye Acharana, the behavior. Say that Dharma Sada, the essence of all religion. Translation of devotee's behavior. establishes the true purpose of religious principles. The behaviour of Madhavendra Puri Goswami is the essence of such religious principles. Please repeat. A devotee's behaviour establishes the true purpose of religious principles. The behaviour of Madhavendra Puri Goswami is the essence of such religious principles. So Prabhupada's purport. It's quite a long one. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gives the following commentary on this passage. A sadhu or honest man is called a Mahajan or a Mahatma. The Mahatma is described thus by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 9.13. Mahatmanas tu mamparta daivam prakritim ashrita bhajantyananya manaso gyatva bhutadim avyayam. Prita. Those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. In the material world, the word Mahatma is understood in different ways by different religionists. Mundaners also come up with their different angles of vision. For the conditioned soul busy in sense gratification, Mahajan is recognized according to the proportion of sense gratification he offers. For instance, a businessman may consider a certain banker to be a Mahajan, and karmis, desiring material enjoyment, may consider philosophers like Jaimini to be Mahajans. There are many yogis who want to control the senses, and for them Patanjali Rishi is a Mahajan. For the Gyanis, the atheist Kapila, Vasishthadev, Durvasa, Dattatreya and other impersonalist philosophers are Mahajans. For the demons Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, Ravan's son, Meghanada, Jarasandha and others are accepted as Mahajans. For materialistic anthropologists speculating on the evolution of the body, a person like Darwin is a Mahajan. The scientists who are bewildered by Krishna's external energy have no relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, yet they are accepted by some as Mahajanas. Similarly, philosophers, historians, literary men, public speakers and social and political leaders are sometimes accepted as Mahajans. Such Mahajans are respected by certain men who have been described in Srimad Bhagavatam. Swavidvara hostra karai samstuta purusha pashu nayat karna pato peto jatu nama gadagraja. Men who are like dogs, hogs, camels and asses praise those men who never listen to the transcendental pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna, the deliverer from evils. Thus, on the material platform, animalistic leaders are worshipped by animals. Sometimes physicians, psychiatrists and social workers try to mitigate bodily pains, distress and fear, but they have no knowledge of spiritual identity and are bereft of relationship with God. Yet, they are considered Mahajan by the illusioned. Self-deceived persons sometimes accept leaders or spiritual masters from a priestly order that has been officially appointed by the codes of material life. In this way, they are deceived by official priests. Sometimes people accept as Mahajans those who have been designated by Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur as Danga Vipras, impostor Brahmins. It's a good word for you, Danga, impostor. Such impostors imitate the characteristics of Srila Haridas Thakur and they envy Haridas Thakur, who was certainly a Mahajana. They make great artificial endeavours, advertising themselves as great devotees of the Lord or as mystic hypnotists, knowledgeable in witchcraft, hypnotism and miracles. Sometimes people accept as Mahajans demons like Putana, Trinavarta, Vatsabhaka, Agasura, Denika, Kaliya and Pralamba. Some people accept imitators and adversaries of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, such as Pondarika, Srigala Vasudeva, the spiritual master of the demons, Sukracharya, or atheists like Charavaka, Kingvena, Sugata, and Arhat. People who accept such imitators as Mahajans have no faith in Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rather, they accept godless cheaters who present themselves as incarnations of God and cheat foolish people within the material world by word jugglery. Thus, many rascals are accepted as Mahajans. Om Agyanatamarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurmatamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Kam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Lagate Grimya Kripatamam Bande Shri Grimjintaranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu-Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. A devotee's behaviour establishes the true purpose of religious principles. The behaviour of Madhavendra Puri Goswami is the essence of such religious principles. So there's plenty in this purport here. We may continue with this next week, or we may continue more with it today, but I thought there was enough to get going with. So interesting, this word Mahajan. Can anyone give a literal translation of it? What does Maha mean?
Right.
Yeah, and Jan?
Population.
Yeah, population or people. So a great personality. So Prabhupada is making many different examples here of, he's shown different examples of so-called great personalities according to what is important to people. Like someone might think David Beckham's a Mahajan, but according to what is a real great person, then he's nothing like it. He's a great football player, at least he was. Or someone might think that Muhammad Ali was a Mahajan because he was like, or that Elvis Presley was a Mahajan because he's the king of rock and roll. But that is such a mockery. You know, he may be a great famous person in his own field, material field. Also this word guru, some people like to talk about my tennis guru or my IT guru. So it's a very, guru actually means it's related to spiritual life. We might use it, you know, like someone is your Mridanga guru or something like that. That's maybe a bit different because it can be used in Krishna service, but so the word Mahajan, what is a real great person? So what is great? You know, what is great to one person? So just like in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, what is daytime for the materialist is nighttime for the devotee, and vice versa. So that would mean what the devotees are attracted to, what is interesting to them, is not interesting to the materialists, and what is interesting to the materialists is not interesting to the devotees. In our conditioned state it might still be interesting, but actually we're working to become free from being attracted to the lower base materialistic things in life. So even in the beginning we might not have an interest. It's like we might not be interested in chanting, we might not be interested in hearing, but the more we take an interest in it, we'll see that actually there's so much meaning, there's so much pleasure in that. It's we can get a pleasure which we can't find by sleeping. We can get a pleasure we can't find by mating, any type of sense gratification, because the soul is ananda, full of bliss. Then in the material world it's known as the opposite. So Prabhupada explained that spiritual life means Sat Chidananda. What does Sat mean? Eternal, yeah. It doesn't mean that somebody once sat in a place. Sat Chit. Chit means knowledge, and Ananda, bliss. And so Prabhupada explains that the material world is the opposite. It is Asat, which means it's temporary. Achit, which means it's full of ignorance. And Nirananda, it is not full of bliss. It's not that it's very near to being Ananda, it's actually without Ananda, like Nirvana, Nirguna. Nirguna means no qualities, no material qualities. Nirmama means not mine, nothing is mine. So this Nirananda means that there is no bliss in the material world. There may be some, what's that term, some sparsha? Is it the contact of the sense objects with the senses? This is the nearest we get to any kind of real pleasure in the material world, and that is considered to be like you're in the desert for some time and you're chasing some mirages, and finally you come across one little standpipe with a tap, and it's seized shut, it's rusty, and a little drip, every now and again there's a little drip of rusty water coming out, and you're underneath going, nectar. This is bliss. So this is material world. When we reach Caritamrita and we see the devotees, the ecstasy that they're experiencing, that is ananda. And that is not some kind of paltry sense gratification which is simply deteriorating our intelligence, and which in the end puts us in either embarrassing or disabled condition. So as long as we have a body, disease will be there, that's a fact. So it's not necessarily that simply by becoming a devotee we'll have no disease, we'll have no discomfort or inconveniences in the material world. As long as we have a body, as long as we're in the material world, there will be threefold miseries coming from our own body and mind, other living entities, natural phenomena. Everybody's subject to those. But how we deal with them when they come along, then that is the test for the devotee. To remember that everything is temporary, matra sparshasta konteya, siddhashno sukadukada. That these non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress are like the temporary appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons, and we have to learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So sometimes we can tolerate things, but we're still disturbed. Anybody ever find that? They might, zip it. Maybe somebody says something, does something, and you feel like you want to say or do something in return, but you tolerate it. But are we really tolerating it? We're just actually clamming up. We're maybe not saying it, but can we tolerate it without being disturbed? That is a real thing, isn't it? So at least it's a start. Just like when we give up this very famous verse, Svavid Vara Hoshta Karai Samatuta Purusha Pashu. Hogs, dogs, camels and asses. We'll get into that in a minute. But so just like people are, we may give up the interaction with the sense, objects in the senses, like perhaps we don't go drinking or taking drugs or go dancing or whatever else we might do in the material world. We might not do that, but it doesn't mean to say that the desire has left. So at least it's a start, we stop doing it. And then in due course of time, from purification, then the desire becomes purified as we start to align our desires with satisfying Krishna's desires. So that is the way where we can make very rapid advancement. So whether we're living in the temple or we're living at home, the idea is to live a life to try to satisfy Krishna's desires. Now Krishna's desire, we can understand that Lord Caitanya is Krishna, and his desire is that everybody should hear about Krishna and find out about Krishna, and through either the holy name, through transcendental literature, which explains the philosophy and the pastimes of Krishna, and through prasadam. So somehow or another we can give Krishna consciousness to others. So this is pleasing Krishna. And we may not feel like we know Krishna or we know Lord Caitanya, but by doing this we get to know him. Just like we maybe never met Prabhupada personally, but we don't feel that we didn't know him because we read about him in his books, we hear about him in the Prabhupada Caitanya, we follow everything we're doing here at the temple and at home as devotees. It's all because of what Prabhupada gave us, so we are connecting a relationship through this following in the footsteps of the actual Mahajana Yenagata Sapanta, that we follow in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. So the more we align ourselves with that, then the sooner our desire will align with Krishna's desire, and then there's no more fear. When we don't align ourselves with Krishna's desires, then even if externally we're doing something, then still we have some fear in the material world. And fear is only there simply because we're not fully Krishna conscious. Like Jad Bharat, he wasn't afraid. Recently we've been reading Srimad Bhagavatam, and the king who was being carried in the palanquin was a very, very powerful person. And Jad Bharat, he was avoiding standing on the ants. He was carrying one of the palanquin bearers, but you can imagine there's 4 palanquin bearers, and one of them is like, it's like trying to drive down the street with a puncture on your car. You've got 3 good wheels and one is totally flat. If you've ever experienced it, it's just you have to stop. You can't go on like that. So the Maharaja Hugana, he started chastising Jad Bharat, and maybe if one of the other ones had caused the problem, they might have been very fearful because the king is very powerful. You know, he's got the power to punish severely if he wanted. But Jad Bharat, he had no fear because he's completely in knowledge of his constitutional position. Therefore, he has nothing to fear in this material world. And all the fears culminate in the fear of death, because at the time of death, everything which we're afraid of losing is lost all at once. So better that we lose it willingly now, hand it over to Krishna. At least, our consciousness is to see that nothing is mine. Let me just use everything in Krishna's service. If we don't use it in Krishna's service, then that's where fear is there. So we should be to become free from fear. Vita raga bhaya krodha man maya mam apashutaha bahavo gyana tapasa puta mad bhavam agataha. So this word vita means, anybody? Freedom. Freedom. What's that Latin word vitae? What's that mean? It means life, does it? I think it means life. So the real free life is raga bhaya krodha, to become free from raga, attachment, bhaya, fear, and krodha, anger. So the fear and the anger is coming from the attachment. If we're attached to something material, we're afraid to lose it. So sometimes people think, well, if I could just win, the lottery. Of course, the old joke is you have to buy a ticket first. So any devotees thinking they're going to win the lottery without buying a ticket because they don't want to gamble, just accept you're never going to win the lottery. But just say someone who's thinking that they're going to, maybe they win the lottery, and sometimes it can be like obscene amounts of money. Someone's used to earning maybe £1,000 or £2,000 a month, and then all of a sudden they've got like 15 million, and they just don't know what to do with themselves. So, but what do? The first thing is they have to figure out how to protect that. So they might first of all, one thing they'll do is they won't answer any mail, close down their emails, close down their mails, and I've experienced of that. There's someone who we knew whose son became very, very famous and wealthy, but now I can't get him on the phone. Not that I was calling him because his son was like that, but I realised I could understand why he changed his number, because probably people were trying to get through to him based on his son's fame and wealth. And you maybe do the same thing yourself, because so many people then become your friends when you've got money. And then when you don't have it, then they don't want to know. Yeah, so the first thing they have to do is they have to protect their newfound wealth, because Lakshmi, Goddess of Fortune, has come in the form of £15 million. So what do? They buy a nice big house and they put a big fence around it with dogs and security guards. So what kind of freedom has that bought them? They become a prisoner. They're not free at all. Whereas, to the other extent, is someone who may be even homeless. They may have actually more freedom. They can come and go knowing that I've got nothing to lose. Nobody's going to steal anything from me. I've got nothing. So the devotee thinks like that, actually I don't have anything. Everything's Krishna's, so if it comes or it goes. It's like one time at Hoxha Prabhu, him and Prabhupada Charan, they were at the, I don't know if it was Tina Park or another agriculture show, but they collected a huge amount of Lakshmi and they kept it in the motorhome, and they built up over a few days. And of course, we are quite happy to take any amount of money and we use it in Krishna's service. Prabhupada said, if you gave us £1 million this morning, and we'll have it spent in Krishna's service by this afternoon. So if anybody wants to test us on that, feel free. But But what happened, they came back at the end of the day, and in a few days, big collections, and all the books had been distributed on account of that, so it had just been stolen, the motorhome had been broken into. And rather than getting fried and getting upset, getting angry and going off, they just decided, oh well, at least we don't have to bank it, and then just carried on collecting again. So this is because the devotee doesn't think this is mine. We learn from it, we think, okay, perhaps we should park somewhere else, or maybe we should take some other security measures, just like today. The temple room back door was left unlocked, and that means there's no security for the deities. Somebody could open that up, pull the deities off the altar or something like that, and whoever left that opened means that they were responsible for that. So we do think in terms of security, and we wouldn't be detached if somebody pulled the deities off the altar. We're not detached in an impersonalistic way. So of course we think, I'm sure the devotees, when they collected all that Lakshmi, they're thinking, well, all those people who gave the donation now, those donations can't be used in Krishna's service, and whoever stole it is going to have a big price to pay for that, because obviously they'll use it in some kind of degraded way. They're not going to go and buy a load of books with it, a load of Prabhupada's books. So anyway, but the thing is, the devotees, because they see everything as Krishna's, they can be detached. But detachment doesn't mean to say they don't care. It's like if we have a car which belongs to the temple, which belongs to Krishna, it's not like, well, it's not my car, so I won't bother checking the oil and water. The tyre looks flat, but I'm just detached from that, Then we'll be detached to the point where the car won't be there any longer. We'll just have to be detached from our number 11 bus, which is walking. So we care about Krishna's property because it's Krishna's, it's Tadiya, it belongs to Krishna. Just like if a fire, say someone's offering arti and the ghee wick falls off the lamp holder thing, what do you call that thing? A lamp, yeah. If the ghee wick falls off the lamp, then we don't think, oh, this is an arrangement by Providence, let the temple burn down. We're not like that. We think, oh, this is Krishna's temple, let me extinguish that fire. So we use our intelligence when we come to Krishna consciousness. We leave so many things behind. We might leave our music collection or our antique collection or stamp collection or whatever we're interested in the material world, whatever things we're accumulating. We might leave that behind. We might leave some so-called friends behind who we realise are no longer conducive association for advancing in Krishna consciousness, according to my Pashashkira. But one thing we shouldn't leave behind is our intelligence. We should bring that with us. We don't suddenly just become like some kind of zoned out, blissful, transcendental space case. Actually, Buddha Yoga means to use our intelligence to surrender to Krishna. Stitadi Muni. Muni means a great thinker, M-U-N-I. Stitadi Muni means that one whose intelligence is fixed and is always agitating their mind to think of new ways to engage in devotional service and to think of new ways to spread Krishna consciousness to others. So in this way, our intelligence actually is at its proper use. So everything we have, even our mind, it's not that we can amputate the mind. Sometimes the mind becomes very troublesome to the point where it's got you in a corner. But we can't amputate the mind. But what we can do is we redirect it. So when we follow the mind is our enemy. When we direct the mind becomes our friend. It's as simple as that. And if we're not directing our mind, and someone else comes along because we see we're not directing it, we're following it, then we should be grateful that, okay, I can't control my mind, but someone's helping me here. They tell me, just follow this. So this is also a part of Vaishnava etiquette here. Here it's talking about devotee behaviour. Is that someone gives us higher knowledge, we should accept that because it's for our benefit. Not that we defend every step of the way. It's not that we have to be dragged back to Godhead, kicking and screaming and protesting I don't want to go back, I want to stay here. And Krishna said, no, come back. It's like, okay, I'll come back, but why do I have to get up for Mangalarti? Why do I have to chant japa? Why do I have to listen to Srimad Bhagavatam class? Why do I have to do service? We never ask, why do I have to take prasad? Do we? Anybody say that? Why do I have to take prasad? This is terrible, you know. I want to fast. Actually, we did hear one devotee once, he wanted to fast. And we're saying, you know, it's maybe not good for you to fast, because some people, if they fast and they're not good, they're not have good state of mind, then it can agitate their mind further. Or sometimes people fast for the wrong purpose, like in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada talks about fasting for a political purpose. The devotees may do that for a different purpose, strategic purpose, but generally we don't. But Prabhupada was referring to, I think it was Mahatma Gandhi who was fasting for a political purpose. This is considered to be austerity in the mode of passion. It's for a material gain. It's not necessarily for developing spiritual consciousness in the individual or anyone else. So this Mahajan, great personality, we have to understand what's the criteria for a great personality. So someone can kick a ball into a net and better than the other 21 people who are on the park at that given time, so they become a great personality. Someone can hit a ball with a racket and better than some of the other people at that given point in time, they become a great personality. They get a bit of metal with their name inscribed on it and they put it in their room, and anybody comes in, it's there for everybody to see how great they were at that point in time in the whole vast universe, that they were able to knock this little ball in that direction and the other person wasn't able to catch it. It's and the whole world's going, oh, magic, fantastic, that's great. And we spend billions of pounds on these things, and we breach lockdown regulations and things like that. And so many things going on simply on account of people want to satisfy the desire. Now, if people like sport, that's whatever. But as from a devotee point of view, it's a major distraction. Sometimes for a little bit of light relief, devotees may engage in something like that, but we don't make it a career, we don't make it a big distraction. In fact, swimming is a Vaishnava sport, although it's not something you do very often in Scotland, unless you've got maybe a wetsuit or something, even in the summer. Recently somebody had found a really nice beach in Scotland, and then they ran into the water thinking, because a lot of people are not going on holiday abroad, then people are going on holidays locally in the UK. And pretty much any beach in the UK, you might find a really nice beach, and then you run into the water, and then you're shrieking because it's freezing cold. You can't stay in there too long. No, unless it's been warm for like a few weeks or something in a row. So the spirit to enjoy is there, but even though we want to enjoy so much, we can't always find it. And even if we do find some situation, all it takes is some small minor adjustment, and then the enjoyment can be completely reversed. Just like we know one person went on holiday with his wife and 2 kids, and I'm not sure it was the first day, but wife drowned in the sea right in front of his eyes. Totally devastating trauma for the kids, traumatised for life, you know, and end of the holiday. There was another occasion when some had worked hard all their life, and at the beginning of the retirement, they had used a good deal of their savings to go on a trip of a lifetime, and it was because the person never made it back. So this is the thing, is like, we're always thinking in the future we're going to enjoy. Either we're going to enjoy now, so let's not worry about the future. Eat, drink and be merry, for tomorrow we may die. It could be that attitude, or it could be, let's be sensible and be everything in moderation, and then at the end we can enjoy, once we're finished with work, we can enjoy a retirement, but there's no guarantee. In the material world there is no guarantee. What did they say? Two things which are certain in this world are? Taxation and death. And of those two, one is even more certain than the other. You might be able to get away with dodging your taxes, but there's always someone looking out to catch you. They're very expert at doing that. But certainly no one has been born who hasn't died. And if that person is living now, then nobody would know until some time from now. But the history tells us, so if you want the best idea of the future is the past. Everyone who's been born as a human being in existence of since history or beyond before, everyone has died. So similar with us, that applies to us too. We can be sure of it. There's no escaping it. But the fact of the matter is actually there is no real death. It's only a major inconvenience of the body. Now, if we're attached to the body, it's a major inconvenience. And being attached to the body means attached to all the things which come with the body: family, friends, society, objects, possessions, conceptions of who we think we are, reputation, etc. So all these things, to leave them behind is a major inconvenience, because we get another body, and if it's a human body, then we start it all over again, and then again, and then again, and then again. This is samsara. So first thing we sing in the morning is samsara dava nala lida loka. It's a wheel of birth and death. It's like a fire. Nobody can trace when it started. It's like a forest fire. It could be simply, it's a warm day, and there's a bit of a breeze, and some sticks are rubbing together, and then fire starts. Maybe there's nobody there even. So we cannot trace it. So there's no point trying to trace it. And we can't extinguish the forest fires. Sometimes the forest fires are so big, even with all the human technology and resources they have, sometimes they just can't compete with nature. And so material life is like that. And this forest fire is actually the fire of desire, that we are perpetuating this fire of desire by continually pouring oil on it, pouring fuel. If you think that by putting fuel on the fire it will go out, then we're mistaken. So we have to identify, what is that fuel? Where in my life am I putting fuel on the fire? And then so people go about that in different ways. Sometimes they just cease activity because they realise what I'm doing is just simply filling my desires, and the desire momentarily is satisfied, but then it comes back again. Just like you throw the fuel to fire, it goes down a bit and then it comes back up even higher. So that's a wonderful analogy there. First thing in the morning to remember that analogy. But the spiritual master, Ganaganatvam, he's like the cloud. So in the forest fire, mankind may make great endeavour to put out a forest fire, but what they're doing is praying for rain. When the rain cloud comes, and then heavy rain comes, it's just widespread, and then it takes care of the forest fire. So the spiritual master, he's that rain cloud of mercy, and his mercy comes in the form of instructions. It's not just that, he leads a nice kirtan, I like the way he sings, or I like the way he plays kartals, or he dresses very neatly, or whatever. It's actually the instructions coming from the spiritual master. That is how the material existence is extinguished, and then time of death comes. We know we've nothing to lose because we used everything in Krishna's service, so we're ready to go. As soon as we're engaged, Prabhupada says we can become a pure devotee in a moment, or it can take many lifetimes. So as soon as we align ourselves with engaging in Krishna's service completely, so of course it's a gradual process, but we should be trying to make steps forward. It's not that we're expected to do it overnight. So we have to be willing. It's a willing process. That means that someone shouldn't have to force us. If someone's having to force us, it means that we're not showing enough willingness. Not that it's the person to blame who's trying to force us there. It's just like somebody's sick and someone's trying to force them medicine because they know they'll get better. So we shouldn't be taking things personally, we should be taking things which are going to be good for our spiritual life. If the gold is in the filthy place, just take the gold anyway. No, you're going to get wealthy by it. So if the instruction's there and it's going to help us improve, don't wait for everyone to be perfect before you're going to listen to an instruction. We'll all be here forever. Kali Yuga, Kali Dosha Nidhi Rajan Mahaguna Sahabat. So in the Kali Yuga, it's an ocean of faults. If anybody thinks that they're very smart because they can see the faults in everybody, then all they've proven is that they're very much a Kali Yuga specimen because it's easy to find faults. It's hard to find good. So the person who can find the good, even if there's a lot of discrepancies there, the person who can endeavour to see good, then that person has got a lot of good in them. So this is what Lord Caitanya was asking, that we should try to see the good in others. By doing that, then what happens is we cultivate good in ourselves, and then we also encourage the good in them as well. So the real great person is the one who can free us from the ocean of birth and death, free us from this wheel of samsara, this forest of material desires. This is a real great person, not someone who just distracts us from the purpose of human form of life because they're great at something material. Even people in the name of guru or yogi, they may be able to do so many things, but what is their ability to free one from the birth, death, old age and disease? There's that verse I told you was quoting yesterday, do you remember the Sanskrit? Pita nasasyat, svajani nasasyat, guru nasasyat. Yeah, it was one shouldn't become spiritual master, teacher, mother, father, unless one can deliver one's dependents. There's quite a list of them, isn't there? Does anybody know the full verse? So this is the question is, can they deliver them from ocean of birth and death? If someone's putting themselves forward as a spiritual leader, what's their connection with Krishna? Are they in parampara? Krishna says, Evam parampara praptam imam raja shayo vidu sarkalani hamata yoganasta parantapa. This supreme science was thus received through disciple succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. So this is how it's received. And tadvadi pranipatuna pariprashnena sevya upadikshanti te gyanam gyaninasta tatvadarshana. The process of approaching the spiritual master and receiving that knowledge is just try to learn the truth by approaching the spiritual master. So we have to approach. Sometimes we can ask ourselves, do I ever ask anybody, how could I be a better devotee? What could I do to improve my devotion service? Or do we just always wait until someone gets on our case? If we're more willing, then the process goes easier. It's just like sometimes a medicine can be sweet. You get some medicines that actually taste quite good. I remember when I was a kid, I even faked being sick once so I could get a certain medicine that I liked. I used to like Disprin because it was like lemonade to me at that time for some crazy reason. Oh, I'm not feeling well, can I get a Disprin? Oh yeah, okay. Can I get another one? No, there's nothing wrong with you. Just sense enjoyer, rascal. So it's better if we're actually, sometimes the medicine isn't as sweet, sometimes it's not so sweet, but if we're willing, then it's not so bad. Even if the medicine's not so good, then if you're willing, you think, well, I know it doesn't taste so good, but I know it's going to be good for me, so let me just, what do you say, just grin and bear it. So it can be a bit like that, but it's worth it in the end, absolutely. 100% definitely worth it in the end. So we've all come to Krishna consciousness because we've read Srila Prabhupada's books and we've understood that this is the right path to follow. This is the very clear, straightforward, definitive explanation of who we are, who is the supreme cause of all causes, what is that relationship, How can we re-establish that relationship? How can we get free from the entanglement of the material world? It's a very powerful and strong message. It's no small thing. It's the most significant thing that's happened to us since we came in the material world is here's a chance to get out again. But everything which you've cultivated for millions of births, not just this lifetime, you get the opportunity to leave it all behind and go to something which is much, much better. Where it's not Asat, Achit or Nirananda, it's Satchit Ananda. So this is a Acharya, this other word here. Acharana means the behaviour. So like Acharya means one who teaches by example. So we see that the examples there, Srila Prabhupada and many of his disciples are taking the great responsibility to teach us by example for our benefit. I think it was maybe Narottam Das Thakur who said that even if I come to the point where I'm performing spontaneous devotional service where there's no need to be concerned about rules and regulations, still to set an example, then I will follow these rules and regulations. So therefore, we shouldn't be distracted by someone even who apparently is on such a high platform they don't need to follow. We all have to follow, we all have to be looking to see how can I follow better. If we want to know how to do that, read Nectar of Devotion, Nectar of Instruction. These books are there to show us how to practically be a devotee. So this, we started on the first part of this purport and we'll continue with it next week. So to learn how to be a devotee, then we have to accept basically that which is favourable for advancing in Krishna consciousness and reject that which is unfavourable. That is the basis. Same with preaching. Desha Kala Patra means time, place and circumstance. Then we accept that which is favourable for advancing and reject that which is unfavourable. And the specifics of that are given in the Nectar of Instruction, the type of association, how to associate with devotees, what type of association to avoid, what things are conducive for advancing devotional service, what things are detrimental. So these very simple things there, starting from, what's the first verse again? How does it go again? First verse of Nectar Instruction. So beginning with controlling the senses, and Prabhupada says that the tongue is the most voracious and uncontrollable of the senses. Sometimes we say things we regret, even our mind saying, our intelligence says, don't say that, but we say it anyway and think, oh no, I shouldn't have let that out. Now we've let it out, I'm going to have to qualify that or get ready for the rebuffal on that, or rebuttal, whatever you call it. So the tongue is very difficult to control, but we control that tongue by chanting Hare Krishna. Krishna and his name are non-different. Krishna is pure, pavitram. So when we chant Hare Krishna, our tongue becomes purified, our mind becomes purified. When we take Krishna Prasad, the tongue wants to eat. That's natural. Even Prabhupada would say, one devotee went to Prabhupada and said, oh Prabhupada, I have difficulty controlling my tongue. And Prabhupada says, I also have a tongue. So he was saying, it's not that he didn't have any potential difficulty, but we take Krishna Prasad, we chant the holy name, we speak about Krishna, we discuss how to do our service better. So we engage in the tongue and the other senses, and this is also purifying the mind. And then when the mind becomes purified, it becomes our friend, it starts giving ideas how to engage in devotional service, as opposed to ideas how to avoid and how to get into Maya. So when the mind becomes Krishna-ized, it's our friend, and intelligence similarly, it starts directing the mind how we can engage our mind and senses in Krishna's service. So this devotional service and chanting Hare Krishna, both of these are feeding each other. When we're chanting, we're asking for service, and when we're doing service, we're trying to engage the senses and the mind so we can become purified, because as we're reading in the Nectar of the holy name, Namamrita, that if we simply just sit and chant all day long, we're not sufficiently purified to be able to do that. Our mind will wander. Maybe for a day, sometimes we do a japathon, and it's really nice, and you can feel the power of the holy name there. But to do that every day means you have to be prepared for a life of poverty, a life of, we wouldn't be able to afford everything we have around here. You'd have to live like a very strict renunciant, and are we ready for that? So generally, as Prabhupada says, people in the West, and practically all over the planet now, are generally controlled by the modes of passion and ignorance, so therefore we have to do something. We always feel the urge to do something. So do something for Krishna, and then we purify this urges of the mind, and the demands of the mind, urges of the senses, etc. And then gradually, as we read the Nectar of Instruction, we see it comes to the end, that by doing this, by controlling the senses, by learning how to associate, avoiding the negative things, accepting the good things, then ultimately we'll be back home with Krishna in the spiritual world forever, and no more trouble with the mind and senses. But for now we have to follow this sadhana bhakti, which means that we have to practically force ourselves to do it. Just like you've got toothache and you really don't want to go to the dentist, but you have to force yourself to go there because you know if I go there, the tooth will get sorted out and it'll be better. So that's what it is. It's just a little bit of evil can do a lot of good. By evil I mean we have to sometimes undergo some difficulty. Sometimes it's not a difficulty if I say, okay, there's a feast today. Someone thinks, oh no, not again. I need to go to the feast. That's not a difficulty. So Krishna consciousness is not all difficult. There's a lot of pleasure there immediately. But sometimes we have to wait a bit, we have to be patient, and that's one of the qualities also mentioned in the next instruction for success in devotional service, then patience. So we'll just stop there. Anyone get any quick questions or comments, corrections? ISKCON Govinda ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Shri Caitanya Caritamrita ki, Thaigor Premanande. Glory back to Govinda ki.